good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. I'm Troy Birch with Great Lakes, Ontario's local brewery. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur, a home brewing enthusiast, into Ontario beer history, or just someone who enjoys some good old breezy beer banter between two fermenters, a podcast brought to you by GLB is your go-to deep dive for all things beer from an insider's perspective. We appreciate you joining us here every 2 weeks as we share stories, spill the beans on new releases and brewery updates, chat with other industry folk about the world of making and drinking craft beer, and offer insights into the biggest news affecting the market. If you can, please subscribe to the pod, and ratings and reviews are always appreciated. Today, we're diving deep into the world of draft beer because, let's be honest, there's nothing worse than a flat, foamy, or funky-tasting pint, unless it's a sour beer. And if you've ever had one, not a sour beer, chances are the issue wasn't the beer itself, but what's happening behind the scenes in the lines. That's where today's guest comes from. I'm happy to welcome Paddy Treacy, the founder of Northern Lines, a Toronto-based company that specializes in draft cleaning, repair, and installation. They bill themselves as experts in draft quality, and for good reason. If there's a problem with your beer, Paddy and his team can fix it. Paddy has been cleaning lines for and at Great Lakes for years now and has seen some pretty remarkable stuff along the way. He knows all the horror stories, lives by best practices, and understands the ins and outs of keeping your beer tasting exactly as the brewers intended. In GLB's case, nice and fresh. Paddy will give us a crash course in draft system maintenance, talk about what goes into setting up the perfect pour, and dig into some of the wildest things, Paddy has seen on the job. I'm excited for that. Plus, we'll tackle some of the big industry questions, like who's really responsible for keeping beer lines clean, and why some bar owners expect breweries to foot the bill for installs. So, grab a fresh GLB, settle in, and let's get into it.
Supporting local is more important than ever. Grab your morning coffee from a local cafe. Purchase fresh bread from your local bakery. Visit your neighborhood mom and pop shop or visit their online store. Secure your lunch or dinner from a bar or restaurant on your block. Local business needs your love, your support. Prop up your neighbors, man. Shop local. Your purchases, that money, it stays within your community. Now crack a beer as a reward, because you deserve it, and so do they. Supporting local never tasted so good. A kind message from your friends at Great Lakes Brewery. GLB, brewed for you, Ontario.
Welcome to Between Two Fermenters, Paddy. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit us here in glorious Etobicoke.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
First things first, what GLB are you going to reach for to kick off the chat here today?
Well, I got to go classic. I'm going to go with a Canuck Pale Ale, in spite of my fridge being full of them right now.
Well, that is an appropriate beer to consume in today's world. It is, Gordy Levesque, the proud Canadian lumberjack on the can. Crack that sucker open and let's get at it. Ooh, nice. Love that sound in the mic. So, as you heard in the intro, I'd like to cover off a lot of stuff today. You know, the history of Northern Lines itself, your mission, how you operate, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the profession. I can't wait to get to that part. But I'd like to start at the beginning and introduce you to our listeners. So, Paddy Treacy, who are you, the person?
That's a great question. So some bits about me. I grew up in a small town outside of Boston, Mass. And when I was 18, I moved up here to Canada. Obama was president at the time. And so I moved up here to go to U of T, where I don't have a degree in microbiology or anything like that. I studied Irish language, and so like Gaelic, and I did my degree in that. And then about 3/4 of the way through, as I was entering my final year, I got offered a job at Steam Whistle, being a tour guide over there. And so I took that job, and I mean, from that, we hopped around a bunch there, and here I am today.
Hopped around. I get
pretty
a
good.
Nice little pun to start off the show. So you're here from the U.S., studying at U of T for Irish.
Irish language.
Irish
yeah.
language.
Celtic Studies is the name of the
What kind of
program.
career would you have gone into if you finished that? Or did you finish that? Or
I did,
you
yeah. I
finish
did
it?
a specialist there. And, I think beer is a natural progression there.
Well, Solancha.
Oh, slancha.
So you got into steam whistle. You said you got offered a job, so you applied to become a tour guide.
So not exactly.
Okay.
When I was at U of T, I went to Trinity College, and over there I was the head of arts in my third year, which was a social position. So you arrange events, you have like a common room for students to come to you if they have any problems or anything. And ultimately, your big job is to make sure that everybody's having a good, safe time, which involved purchasing a lot of beer. At the time, I was buying a lot of those green bottles of steam whistle. And when I finished, my position, it was a 1-year job. I then let them know, my contact there. I said, hey, I'm handing it over to this person. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. And Gord, who was the director,
Gord.
the director of distribution at the time, said, hey, you want a job? We're hiring some tour guides, and good way to start. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I remember going to that interview. I had just sprained my ankle, so I was on crutches. And they had us walking through the brewery, up on the catwalk, all this. And they were like, oh, you can stay down here. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm going on this tour. I had a bottle in one hand, my crutches still going. And after that, I was offered the job and started off working, behind the bar, like over the summer. I stayed working there for a while. And I remember, working downtown in the winter as a tour guide, not many people coming into the Roundhouse. And so we had all those like, the pony pumps.
Yep.
And we had a drawer full of them that were broken. And that's really where my career in draft started off.
Started fixing the pony pumps.
I had nothing else to do. So I started to fix those pumps. And then they had some, some people call them jockey boxes. At Steam Whistle, they called them flash coolers.
Yeah.
These
Were they
portable
actually flash coolers back then?
No, it was a jockey box.
They were coils.
Yeah, it was the coils, but they just called them a flash cooler. Yeah. So I was, I went from fixing these pony pumps to, they said, hey, we have a few of these that are broken. You want to give that a shot? I said, yeah, sure. So I started doing that. And then one thing led to another, and I sort of became in charge of that. They had a cage of them. I was always maintaining them, doing that. And I remember, in the middle there, I worked in the distribution office for a bit. I also got my bus driving license, and I drove the old steam whistle bus, unofficially titled the Paddy wagon. And so, I was driving that bus for a bit. And I remember my then girlfriend, now wife, was in New Zealand, and I went to go visit her. And so I flew out there. We had a great trip. And, we were talking about my career, and I was like, you know what? There's only really one job that I could see myself doing at Steam Whistle, but there's never any openings in it. And it was on what they called Team Clean, which was their line cleaning department. I thought that'd be fascinating. It's a good progression for me. It also came with a Jeep. So I was like, all right, that sounds pretty good. And one thing led to another. I was like, but that's not going to happen. I think I just got to maybe look at a change or something. And when I flew back, I had a layover in LA, and I checked my email, and they said, hey, we're hiring for this position as the Downtown West, member of Team Clean, a line cleaner. And I was like, oh, hot dog. So I started, really studying the stuff. I went to the interview, and they offered me the job doing that. And that really started me in the proper draft side of things. So
what year did you join Steam Whistle? 2009 you came here, so 2012?
It would have been 2012.
2012.
Yeah, April of 2012.
And you were with Steam Whistle for how long in that new role as Team Clean, GTA West, or Downtown West?
Yeah, so I was with Steam Whistle up until the summer of 2016.
Okay.
July 2016.
That's a good run.
Yeah, it was good, and I would have stayed there. But as we said, I am American, and I had applied for permanent residence, but at the time there was a bunch of stuff. They were changing the laws around, whatever. And so I was just waiting to hear back. And I hadn't, you needed like one thing that said that they received your application, then you could stay. Yeah. And if you didn't get that, you had to leave. So I left on, it was like July 7th of that year. And I received the notice that, hey, we got your application on like the 12th. So it was shy by about a week, which meant I had to not be in Canada.
Yeah, so you had to give up the role and move back home. And
Totally. And I was pretty broken up about it at the time. And I remember I spoke with Greg Taylor, the co-founder of Steam Whistle, and he gave me this whole story about a tree that he had. He had this tree at the end of his dock up at his cottage. And he said, they brought this tree in. It was beautiful, all of this. And they had an arborist come in, and it was like a really prized tree for him. And then after like one season, he called the arborist because there were all these gashes in the tree, all of these like big, deep cuts. And it like the sap was coming out and all of this. And he said, hey, this tree is sick. What's going on? And the arborist said, no, that tree is growing. And in order to grow, it has to expand its bark. And this bark is going to end up being the hardest bark in this tree. This is a good sign. We want to see this. And so then, he said, Paddy, you're like the tree. And, while it stinks right now and it seems like it's a bad situation, really focus on growing from that. And honestly, I wouldn't have ever done anything like what I'm doing today if I didn't have to move back to the States for a year.
So there was a silver lining in that missing application.
Totally. When I left, I got a job working with New Belgium in the U.S., and I was their field quality ranger for the Northeast. So I launched the New England states, and I covered Maine to West Virginia, doing all things field quality, and that just opened my eyes.
Did you create that position for them?
No, they had a whole network of field quality rangers throughout the states. They were just hiring one, and in fact, I only saw the job application, and it had already been closed. And so I knew that Steam Whistle and New Belgium had like a friendly relationship at the time. This was before they
Parted ways.
Yeah, did that partnership. They didn't even partner at this point yet. And so I messaged Greg and I said, hey, any chance you have a contact there that could just get my application on the hiring manager's desk? He said, yeah, let me see what I can do. And I got a phone call from the hiring manager, and he said, hey, we're doing interviews tomorrow in Albany, New York, which is like a 4-hour drive from where I was living. Yep. Can you be there? I was like, yeah, you got it. So drove out there, prepped a bunch of stuff, and you got it. I ended up interviewing, got offered the job, and that was an amazing position. It really opened my eyes to a totally different experience.
So you did that, and you took all your Steam Whistle knowledge and you took all your New Belgium knowledge. You moved back to Canada at some point. What year was that?
So that was about a year later. I got my permanent residence in October of 2017, and that's when I started Northern Lines. So
walk me through why you started Northern Lines in 2017 and the decision behind navigate. There's already operators in the profession here in Ontario. Why did we need another one?
Totally. So when I was with Steam Whistle, we were the bee's knees, so we thought, as Team Clean. And it was a good time.
The bee's knees seems to be like a Steam. I've heard so many ex-Steam Whistle people use that term, bee's knees.
I think it's just the old-timey retro vibe of Steam Whistle.
I hear them say it all the time. Okay, so bee's knees, the street team clean, or team clean.
Team Clean, yeah. So we were cleaning, the methodology was using like a canister, and we were doing that about every 4 to 6 weeks. And, that was the thing, we were doing it, we were cleaning the lines. And at that time, it was really, the difference wasn't whether or not you were cleaning them frequently or what method. It was if they were just being cleaned at all. Yeah. That was a good thing. And so when I went to New Belgium, they had a totally different viewpoint on it, which was, following all of the standards as set by the Brewers Association.
The Brewers Association in the U.S.
Yes. So they are an international organization, but they are predominantly in the U.S. And so they had they did all of this research, all these studies that showed when the bacterial count reached a certain level where you could taste a difference. You might not be able to identify what that is, but now most people would say it tastes different. And that is around the 15-day mark. And so what they set up.
15-day mark between cleanings.
Between cleanings, yes. And so they said, okay, it needs to be done every 14 days so that you're never getting to that stage. So every 2 weeks was the line cleaning. And in fact, in some states, it's required by law to have the lines cleaned every 7 days. So this was the way it was in the States. That, as well as using a recirculation pump, which is a totally different method. It's like cleaning with a power washer on the lines instead of just soaking the lines. And I really realized through those little things that, you know what, there's a lot of misinformation in this industry. And honestly,
in Ontario,
in Ontario, yeah, good clarification. There's a lot of misinformation here at that time, and I don't think that it was malicious or anything like that. I just think that it was always kind of, this is how it's always been, and it's been fine.
Yeah, we do tap takeovers at various counts throughout Ontario, and we'd be the only one if we were doing like a collaboration tap takeover, so 12 lines each on a 24. We'd show up with our cleaning kits, and we wouldn't just flush the line, we'd clean the line because you didn't know what was on before and what have you. But there's a lot of breweries that would just be like, oh, just tap our keg on, and run it through. But so you started up Northern Lines. Yeah,
so the reason for Northern Lines was really to dispel some of that misinformation, and I felt that there was a gap. You can really become an expert in this field if you study at it, if you keep on the current stuff. It's not stagnant. It doesn't, what was good 10 years ago isn't the same now. Things have changed. And so keeping up with that and really working at being an expert in draft quality. And so the line cleaning is a big part of it, of course, but there's many other aspects. And so I realized, you know what? I think I could make something happen. And at the time, I was just kind of seeing what would happen. I gave myself, I started in October. I gave myself till Christmas to decide if I was going to keep at it. Yeah, I'm not made of money. I had to make sure that I could, afford rent, that kind of thing. And I remembered the account that made me say, okay, I think I got something here. And it was the Marriott at the Eaton Center. Their purchaser at the time was just very numbers oriented, a very analytical buyer. And he had kept track of, we were able to get the contract to do the steam whistle line there. And we were only doing the steam whistle for a bit. And so he was keeping track of the sales for steam whistle during that period. And he noticed that their sales went up. And so he said, all right, you know what? We're going to have you guys clean all of the lines. And that was when I was like, okay, someone else can see it. Somebody else understands it. And then I said, yeah, I'm going to give myself a little bit longer with this. A
little runway.
Yeah. And here we are. Now we're in our 8th year. So
you started it, and then Steam Whistle obviously was probably your first account, your first brewery account.
Yeah.
So what made them, if you can, leave their team clean to move over to use Northern Lines? Or were you working in kind of tandem with leftover team clean?
Yeah, so at the time they had team clean as well.
Yep.
But it was spread really thin. There's always extra stuff to do. And so my pitch to Steam Whistle was, look, I left and learned a lot when I was at New Belgium. I'd like to test some of those theories here. So they gave me 50 accounts, and they said, okay, here's your 50 accounts. And we did it over the course of, I think it was about 3 or 4 months. And so they said, all right, 50 accounts, 3 or 4 months, and we're going to track it. How do our sales do at those accounts where we're not advertising that it's done every 2 weeks? We're just going to clean them every 2 weeks. And then compare that to similar accounts in the same neighborhoods that would have no other reason why sales would go up or down. And, we figured 50 accounts was a good enough sample. And so what they found was that, in their own numbers, was that the sales for those, those draft accounts went up by 16 points. And that more than covered the cost of the line cleaning.
There you go.
So they said, hey, you know what? Here's a few more. And they started to put those Team Clean members, they started to use them as sales reps. They said, if we have you focused on this, then we can use these guys and their skills a lot of them were already acting as like sales support.
Yeah, they're already in there seeing the issues, reporting back to sales reps saying, oh, this is what we're seeing.
And I was saying to them, it costs you a lot of money to have one person go in to clean one line. If I can talk to a few of the breweries, maybe some of the restaurants want to cover, especially their rotator lines, that kind of thing, then I can spread that, with everybody. And so that's what we did. And it, I really do have to thank all of my customers because we really just grow by word of mouth and by, trust and reputation. And, I remember Great Lakes was one of the very early adopters. I
was going to say, who was number 2?
I believe it was you guys and it was Left Field, where some of the ones that really hopped on early, as well as Side Launch.
There's another pun again. Okay, Paddy's all about the puns. So Great Lakes, Left Field, and Side Launch.
Yeah.
So you got the accounts, you lined them up. It was a little, you gave yourself a longer runway. Now you're going, you're seeing some movement. You're seeing the direct benefit of your 2-week cleaning schedule and your mission, which we're going to get to in a second. But for those listening at home, because I was a rep for many years and I cleaned some lines, but I am still, I would say, a novice when it comes to draft line maintenance. Draft line troubleshooting. I know the basics, but walk me through. You get a call from a brewery, or you get a call from an account. Walk me through a regular cleaning, and then walk me through some of the number one common issues that you get at a bar or restaurant.
Yeah, so for our regular maintenance cleaning, we're going to go in there. We're going to speak with the account. We always like to check in to see, hey, are there any issues that you want to let us know about while we're here? And then we'll start getting set up. And so with the recirculation cleaning, we are going to be making a circuit using all of the lines. And so how you do that is you're going to be connecting every other line in the cooler. So, for example, you'll connect line 2 and 3, the couplers, the pieces that'll attach to the kegs themselves. So you'll be connecting those together. And then line 4 and 5, you'll connect together, etc. Meanwhile, at the bar, you're going to be connecting lines, 1 and 2, and then lines 3 and 4, to make a circuit, as an example. And so you connect your pump to whichever, your first line is, and then it's going to go at a higher pressure and in reverse flow. On every other line. So it's going to go towards the keg room. And then since those two couplers are connected, it's going to come back using the other line. And then you've connected that, shank where the faucet attaches. You've connected that with the shank next to it. So then it's looping back around. And so you're creating one system. And doing that, you can clean a lot of lines at once, but you're also using a much higher pressure than those old school canister cleanings. So that's how you clean with a recirculation pump, which is a big thing that we do. We only clean with recirculation pumps.
So I'm going to hijack for a second. The old canister cleaning kegs, we called them.
Yeah.
So you're only running the pressure. The pressure is only coming from the beer gas or the CO2 that's pushing the actual beer from. So are you tapping into that with your circulation, or is that your circulation?
So we don't use any gas. So we use electric.
Plug and play.
Because the interesting thing with the gas as well is that CO2 is a weak acid, and we're using a strong caustic. And so that gas that's in the headspace of those kegs will make the chemical in there less effective at cleaning over time. And on top of that, you're only ever going at the same pressure that the system is used to.
That's what I'm saying. So
now we're dialing it up,
because you could have some lines that are like a higher PSI, pounds per square inch, and some that are lower depending on the style of beer. So when you do go in and you see let's say 8 taps, and some might have different regs on regulators, and you crank one up because it's lower because it's a highly carbonated.
Yep.
And that's when you're going to clean the lines, you're not getting as effective push through rate.
So
the circulate.
So the pressures for the individual lines, those will affect the head pressure in the keg.
Okay. Yes.
And I think that we'll dig into some of that stuff in a little bit. But that doesn't affect the cleaning side of it. When you are using a canister, though, that will affect it, and it makes it, the gas will make it less effective of a like liquid solution that you're pumping through. Whereas since ours isn't being touched by any CO2, then we can just pump it through using the electric pump. And, another big aspect of our company that, has been at the forefront since we started was sort of an environmentalism approach. We live in the city, and so if we had a bunch of cars on the road, that, adds to it. And so how we've designed everything is we have one technician who has a car, and that technician does, Scarborough, Etobicoke, that kind of stuff. All of our other technicians use the TTC or bicycles.
Really?
And so we redesigned it so that all of the equipment can fit into a backpack. And so they're like the Ghostbusters. They go through there, and everybody else is complaining about, traffic and parking and whatever. And our techs, the TTC is one thing, but that's a different conversation. But our techs are able to get around using the path in the winter. We're able to get downtown and, just take care of our accounts. So it's a very different approach.
God bless those people taking the TTC to get to from point A to point B or A to Z. Okay, so sorry, I really cut you off when we went off, but just the process. So you start with the circulate or the
so the recirculation pump.
recirculation.
So that's the line is being cleaned during that. Then the other important pieces are we're going to let the faucets, that are where you're pouring the beer out of. So we will open those up and put them into the chemical solution to soak for a couple of minutes while we're getting everything set up. Once they've soaked, then we will fully disassemble them and hand detail them. That's where a lot of bacteria buildup happens, especially if you're, dunking the pint into the faucet. It gets pretty gnarly.
Are you cleaning lucre tops now? So lucre tops for the listeners are just the Czech style side pours, and you do put your mug right into it. And so you're cleaning those, you're disassembling those as well too.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So I actually am a bit of a lucre expert.
Okay. You got the accreditation.
Yeah, I've been interviewed for it before, and I'll have to find some of those articles. But it's pretty neat. It's a very cool piece of kit, the lucre. And I actually bought one during the pandemic,
just to
right at the beginning of lockdown, because I was thinking, when people come back to the bars, I think that they want a different experience, something you can't have at home. And a pint often offers that, but a lucre, it tells a totally different story. It really is about the romance of the experience of drinking beer.
And it changes the whole complexion of the...
Totally.
Yes.
And some beers benefit from that. Some not as much. But what I love about it is you can have a Mliko pour of any beer, and then it will bring out flavors that are just almost muted in the normal experience with the beer. That next time when you're drinking it just normally, suddenly you're getting all these grassy notes out of it that you never picked up on before, just because you had it in a different manner. And that's really exciting to me.
And a great example of that is at Great Lakes. So you can go to the brewery tap room, and you can have one of our Czech lagers or a German Pils poured through the lucre. Then you can go to the brew pub and have the exact same beer that's not, and you can see the difference. You can tell the difference. So let's move over to your. So you're cleaning the lines. You walked us through that.
Let me just add one quick thing.
The acid wash.
The acid wash is also important, but we also hand detail all of the couplers and the fobs as well.
Yes.
So that's also important. I got to note that afterward we post rinse it with water to get all the chemical out, and then we take everything. We put it all back together the way it should be, and then we tap the kegs, run those through, good to go.
Do your cleanings take longer than the average, other technicians out there in the market?
Well, that depends.
Let's say you're cleaning 2 lines each. Or no, let's go 4 because of the recirculation. Sure. So you're cleaning 4 lines, and they're cleaning 4 lines. Are you the only one using the recirculation method?
I've seen a few other recirculation pumps out there. I know that for a lot of the larger companies doing it, they generally are only using the canisters still. But I have seen a couple of recirculation pumps. I'll be honest with you. There are not all that many line cleaners in the province these days.
We're going to talk about that.
I don't run into many.
Yeah. Okay, so does it take 4 and 4?
Yeah.
Would it take you longer? What's an average line cleaning look like?
So I would say
for 4 taps. Let's say.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where the pump has to run for a set amount of time. And so the pump has to run for a minimum of 15 minutes of recirculation
for 4
the chemical.
lines.
For any amount of lines, has to be 15
yeah.
minutes of recirculation with it.
Okay.
And generally, for a 4-line clean, I would say that's going to take us about 45 minutes.
Okay.
For an 8-line clean, it's going to take us about an hour.
Okay.
And so it scales very nicely when we have a lot of lines. Like a 2-line clean, it's going to take us about 30 to 45 minutes.
Regardless, yeah.
Because it has to run and you have to go down, and a lot of it's just walking back and forth.
So it's advantageous for you and the company to, if you're at a bar and you're doing Great Lakes, left field, whoever else you're working for and with, it's advantageous to get the bar to say, you know what, you're here, clean all of our lines.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for them, it's a big benefit not to have a bunch of different people coming behind the bar at random times, especially when we're cleaning all of their lines. Then we really do prioritize them, their timing. I mean, we have the keys to a lot of accounts because trust is built over time.
You have key codes and keys.
And then we can just go in and take care of it, when they're not open. In fact, when I was working in Boston, they start, like the line cleaners in Boston, start around 10 p.m., and they do the graveyard shift.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they come in when the bars are closing, and then they just do it overnight.
And what time do you guys normally start here?
Our team starts around 7.
7?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, we have a few people who start around 7, and then we, the work-life balance is really important for us. And so we end, the latest I'll have a technician out there is 6. After that, it's considered emergency calls. But that way people can get home, have dinner with their family. Same way, 7 o'clock, that way we're there before the bars are open.
What are your hours, though, as the owner, the founder?
I don't have hours. What do you mean? I'm working all the time.
We've known each other for a long time, as you said, that Great Lakes is one of the early clients of yours. And I've known you to be, and I think listeners will get it from you just by hearing you talk already, you're a pretty passionate person when it comes to this line of work or your line of work. If Paddy catches you in a corner, if you're a brewer or in the industry, he's going to go on for hours about different bars and the lines and what's working, what's not. Education, though, is a big part of what you do. And as you said, if you learn more, you can tell people more and the results will follow. So for breweries and accounts, you have to educate people that don't want to pay for things.
Totally.
Why is education so important, and what's the biggest challenge in educating those in the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that, for me, I jokingly said it's, I don't have hours. I kind of mean that, though, insofar as I do see what I do, not to sound, a bit sappy or something, but I see what I do more as a vocation than a career or a job. This is something that I am passionate about, and that I just think is so interesting, especially because there is so much, like I said, misinformation or just lack of knowledge. Again, I don't think that it's malicious misinformation, but I think that it's just people don't know or they don't understand. And I remember when I had that aha moment and it all started to make sense. It took the magic of it just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, out, and then it became a science.
Sticking your key in a coupler and going, okay, the ball's unstuck. Okay, perfect.
And
that was my method.
And that was the thing that really got me excited and passionate about it. And I really want to share that with people. We've had so many just excellent customers over the years. And we kind of call some of these our legacy accounts because, we're fortunate enough to have been around for so long that we're able to keep really keep a great group of customers. And we call them the legacy accounts if they're like, oh yeah, I know Paddy personally because I used to be the line cleaner for them. Yep. I currently don't clean lines. Usually I'm happy to do it.
You're wearing
but
a tie
I just don't have
today.
the time. I wish I could, dedicate the time to it, but especially on the big cleans, I like to join our team because we'll have a few on there. But for those accounts, it's so exciting to me because almost all of them started as skeptics. And then through trust, but also through learning, me being able to share with them the reason behind everything. And, something I've had to learn a lot is how to communicate that with a customer who is a skeptic without coming off as arrogant or coming off as, I was once told that I was mansplaining, and, I just don't want to, I really don't want to seem that way. I want to just share the passion that I have with others and allow that information to be accessible to them in a way that makes sense. And so I really try to explain the concepts in whatever method is going to make sense to them, because once they get it, then it is just the aha moment for them. And they go, oh, I understand why we need the lines cleaned this frequently. I understand why we need, to use a certain kind of dispense gas. I understand why I'm having all of these issues. And suddenly you exit the, supplier relation and start to enter that like a partner consultant relationship.
There's someone they can call and say, listen, I'm having an issue.
Yeah.
So two questions come from this. One's more of a comment and then a follow-up question.
Please.
Because of what you do and how good you are at it, and then there's others in the industry that are good at it as well, but do you think if it makes reps a little lazier because they know that they can call and count on someone to come and troubleshoot when it could be as simple as turn on your gas? And two, what are the most common issues? I think we didn't touch on that. Yeah. So,
turning on your gas is definitely a common issue, but I would like to speak to that in that I really try to grow that trust and friendship with the sales reps, especially, and with customers. And I always say, phone calls are always free. You want some advice from me? Call me. I'm happy to go through it. I love doing it. I'll get a little video set up and, we can do a quick FaceTime, whatever. And, I've done that for many of our partners, especially like over the weekend. They're at a festival and something's not working. And I'll be like, yeah, sure. Let's hop on a FaceTime.
Put a damn gasket or
totally,
a washer.
Totally.
That's all you need to do. Yeah.
And that stuff, honestly, it is, so much of this is it's about being part of the industry. You're not just a supplier. We're not just whatever. Like we only succeed if everybody else succeeds. And so I want to help people genuinely. And that's where with the reps, I'm always trying to educate them on those simple things. That way, if they're in the field, they feel like, okay, I can confidently take out my draft wrench and check 1, 2, 3 things. If it's none of those, then I can reach out to Northern Lines and we're happy to send somebody right away. Now, as for the most common issues, it's always going to be foaming. It's foaming beer, foaming beer, foaming beer. And that is 90% of the time due to either your temperature or your gas pressure and gas blend. And so I would say almost always it's the temperature of the product. Check that first, especially if it's fresh product and you just tapped it and it's not working well. Check the temperature of the beer. It needs to be below 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And sorry, all draft is done in Fahrenheit. It's just the way it's always been, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, he's okay.
Celsius doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's okay.
So I've heard this over the years, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it after I get your answer, because I think it's something that bears discussion in this industry. But I've heard this idea floated in the past, and I want to get your take on it. Municipalities across the country have strict health guidelines a bar or restaurant has to adhere to in order to operate, to get your license, to continue operating. Proper food safety handling, temperature control of food, so freezers have to be up to a certain temperature, and many other safety protocols like a sink next to your prep area, whatever it has to be. Green is passed. We've seen those in the windows. Yellow is conditional, and red you can get shut down. And we see, Blog TL in Toronto always posting, well, who got shut down this week? Do you think draft line cleaning should be added to this checklist of health inspectors going in, or do you think it should be a separate thing?
So it's very interesting that you bring this up today, because yesterday I literally was having this conversation with a good friend of mine, Lucas, over at Carbonics, gas company out of Guelph. They do Toronto, all this stuff. And Lucas is a fellow draft nerd. And he and I have just, we talk, we collaborate on a lot of stuff. We have a lovely business relationship where we actively do not have a partnership of any kind, because I've always said, I want my work to stand for itself and I want your work to stand for itself. If I'm recommending you, that kind of thing. And Lucas is just such a great person to spitball this stuff with. And yesterday he told me about a location. I won't mention it, but he said that it was the first time he heard of a location getting shut down because of the quality of their draft lines by Toronto Health. And
their draft lines or their fridge?
Their
or
draft
both?
Their draft system was what closed them down. He said he's going there today to get some details.
I'm going to guess it was an air compressor.
I have no idea why, but I think that, when you drink beer, when you drink anything on tap, it's very important that you have these standards in place, at least something in place. And for so many, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's in this dark trunk line. The trunk line is the bundle of all of the products, going through up to the bar. And because you can't physically see it, oftentimes it's just ignored. And often also people say, oh, well, if there's alcohol in it, then it can't be that bad. But now we're starting to see some stuff, there's a bunch of studies in the States about non-alc on tap, and there's a risk of botulism.
Thank God we haven't seen too many of those on tap, because there's no alcohol in the line.
There's some risk.
What's going to happen when it's not moving and it's sitting overnight for 12 hours or whatever?
Totally. And so there's all these different risk factors that, you hear from people who say, I don't drink draft beer. And I'll ask, oh, why? And they go, oh, I get sick from it. It makes me sick. And there are so many reasons why that can happen. And to me, it's always just such a shame when that happens. And so to answer your question, it should 100% be, be regulated by a governing body, that it needs to be clean. That's my
I concur.
feeling on
I
it.
concur with you as well, because we're going to get to the kind of the horror, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Sure.
But there's times where you go into a fridge and there's raw chicken right beside.
Oh yeah, I know.
And I
one
don't
of
want
our accounts has
I don't want
ducks
to.
hanging.
I don't want to say this to be like scary or precautionary. Like, if Northern Lines is going in, the line's going to be clean and everything's going to be proper. But I do think that if you're doing an inspection on food, if you're doing an inspection on proper sanitation and everything, you should add the draft lines or the keg fridge at minimum to that. Yeah.
Beer is food,
So you do more than just clean lines, though. At Northern Lines, you guys do line installs, and whole fridge installs and everything, right? So, tell me what that looks like and how you go about that.
Yeah. So while the line cleaning is probably the thing I'm talking about the most, it's not the majority of the business. The majority of the business is through...
I just learned something new.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know that.
The line cleaning is an aspect. It's a face of the business, We get so much of our relationships through going into the accounts, having those relationships, that trust build up over time by being experts in there. But we try to, keep... Like if we're going in to clean one or two lines, we do not make money. We lose money on that. It's our loss leader, is that we're going in to just have the relationship either with the brewery or with the customer, ideally both. And that is something that we hope leads to more business in the future, which, I think after a few years, we've seen certainly it does lead to that. It's that you're building that trust, that baseline, and you get that through the line cleaning, that maintenance. But then you have the installs, and the installs can also be done very poorly. And if it's done to certain standards, then we will see that in the productivity of the system over time. I'll give an example. So we have an account in downtown Toronto in a new build, and we were not asked to do the installation. It's okay, no problem. We got the account after it was installed because they called us in to do a
troubleshooting.
They were having all these issues, and I looked at their glycol deck, the line chiller. This is a brand new install, a very big account, nice place. And I looked at the glycol deck, and the glycol deck was almost a decade old. And I was like, "Did you guys buy this new?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "This thing, it was dying, it was dead."
Yeah.
And I explained that to them, and they said, "Oh, okay." But the glycol deck, the line chiller, it was on top of the fridge in this corner. No one's ever going to look at it. And so when I highlighted that to them, I took photos, I showed them, it says the manufacture date, and it was from 2014. And I was, totally gobsmacked by that. And then we've done the cleanings there and whatnot. And unfortunately, this account recently had to, stop working with us because of the amount of spillage that they had for their system. And it was the most spillage I've ever seen for a system like this. So I totally understood. And it was something like each clean was 82 liters of product.
Holy man.
Because it was designed poorly. The diameter of the hose that they used in the trunk line was, they just went with the biggest one because whatever, you can just fix it later. And so that means there's a lot of liquid in the line. Whereas if they went one size smaller, it would have halved that.
Yeah.
And if I saw the route that they took, and they're going all over, I find a big loop-de-loop somewhere in the ceiling, and I'm like, this is useless. Yeah. And it was just a lack of care, or maybe more malicious intentions. I don't know.
Or who can do it the cheapest?
And even that, I don't think it was that cheap. So for us, a big thing is I've been a huge proponent of getting rid of anything that's not stainless steel being used. We've never sold any chrome-plated brass. That's a common thing, because that just kills the flavor of the beer. If brass touches your, IPA,
so you're talking brass fittings,
any brass splicers, or the faucets, or the shanks. So we use all either 304 grade or 316
built
grade.
Up on them too over time.
Yeah, and they flake off the nickel plating and all of this. So, but yeah, the installs are a huge part of it, and we love doing those big installs because for us, it's about starting that relationship with the customer on a really great foot. And we always stand behind our work.
What's the proudest install that you've ever done? And you can shout out the location.
That's an interesting question. I would say I have a few. I have a few that I really like. I have a few that I really like. I'm gonna name a couple. Decoy Bar. That job was great. Corey was there. We had such a fun time doing that install.
It's Corey Wells for those listening at home.
And oh man, that was just such a great time. And I love that system there.
Yeah.
And then
he pours a mean Great Lakes lager.
Yeah, that he does.
Delicious Great Lakes lager.
And so, that one was great. And then one that, we've had some issues with because we didn't replace 100% of this system. There were some components we had to reuse. But one that I am very proud of because of the troubleshooting after the fact, figuring out those problems, because we had to deal with, we did a bunch of tests on the equipment to see if it was still of good standard, and it was fine. So none of the issues have been to do with quality, but with poor splices and workmanship of the previous installer. And that was a learning experience for me, never to do that again. But it would be left field at Liberty Village.
Okay.
It's one that...
Oh, that was Three Brewers that were in before.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so we redid all of their stuff going to the taps and all of that. But those tanks in their tank room up there is such a unique experience. And it really was a tough one. It was a tough one. We're still going back there for little things that fail here and there. But it's something that I really think speaks to a partnership that I really like. And to be honest, in a very similar vein is when we redid, I like doing these kind of hybrid projects where we're doing part of it, but not all of it. That stuff's really interesting to me. When we redid the taps over at Great Lakes. Yeah.
The brew pub
at the brewery.
At the brewery.
Yeah, at the brewery. It was just like, okay, you guys used to have those direct draws
Yep.
and all of that. And then we were moving most of the stuff into the walk-in over there. And
Longer shank.
it had all of these, issues with foaming and all of this. And that troubleshooting process, with yourself, with Lackey, with Peter, that was one that I really appreciate, now in hindsight. Like at the time, it's stressful. You want to make sure everything's working, whatever. But I think that we came to a really great solution that showed just the partnership that we've developed over those years. And that's the kind of stuff that I really like. There shows trust. There shows like collaboration. And that's where I'm like, oh, these ones I'm always happy to go
It's
there.
like,
and
oh
have a
my
beer.
God, someone fucked up. Let's call in Paddy and his team to come in here and fix things. We went from 4 taps to 5 taps to 6 taps to we're at 18 taps. We have 16 on the back bar, and then actually we're up
I think
like
you're
20
at 20
now.
Yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's 20.
And you guys still clean the lines on a
course.
14-day basis. I'm going to ask you a tough one here.
Oh, 1 sec.
Oh, there we go.
Good.
It's so great when we have beer people in here and they know what they're doing here. So a tough one for you. Because this is a bone of contention throughout the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Whose responsibility is it to maintain lines in an establishment? The bar owner or the brewery? What do you think?
Legally
Yes,
in Ontario, there are no
Put on
official
your
responsibilities.
diplomatic hat here.
That said, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I think that it makes the most sense for the responsibility to be on the licensee, for it to be the on-premise account should be responsible for it. They make the most profit off of the keg.
It's their establishment, right?
It's their establishment. However, the realities of it are twofold. We have the reality is when one brewery starts offering this, then it becomes, you kind of have to meet it. You have to meet that in order to stay competitive in some ways.
And where did that all start? I'm not sure. Let's not do that.
I'm not sure where it started.
We're fighting each other on like who can put the best system in. Like you go into bars still to this day and you see the L or the 7, whatever, the draft tower, and that's a Labatt system.
Totally.
You go in and you see some of the brass and you see, that's an old Molson system. And so you see, who's covering all of this? Sorry, I digress.
So
answer that question.
So to go back to it, in the U.S., they have very strict laws about it. Each state has its own law about it, but it's very clear. It's either a retailer responsibility state, which means that the licensee, the bar, has to pay for it, or it's a distributor responsibility state, which they have a different kind of 3-tier system there, but that would equal the brewery paying.
The brewery would have to pay the distributor to look after, or the brewery would just cover it, yes.
So those are, it's very clear state by state who's responsible.
And it's enforced
Here,
in U.S.
Yeah. Here we don't have anything. We have nothing that officially says that. That said,
The legislation
we do have
is
some
inducements, and inducements covers off installs and draft cleaning.
But it also covers off coasters and glassware and all
Tap
of that.
handles
And so everybody's giving that out. So we're in this annoying gray area. And ultimately the person who, suffers from it the most is the end consumer, the customer. Because that's sort of the one side is why I think it should be the retailer, is because from the money perspective, it makes the most sense. They can change their price by about 5 cents on your average selling customer, can up their price by 5 cents, and that will cover all of your cost. So 5 cents per pint.
Line cleaning.
All of your line cleaning costs will be covered and then some by that.
Yeah.
That said, if we, look at the brewery side, they have to up their keg price by a good amount a lot of times. So on the other hand, we have, sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit, but we have like, I always say, you're not going to go to your tomato distributor, your tomato producer and say, I want you to pay for cleaning my cutting boards. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that said, you're also not putting, Paddy's tomatoes on the menu and branding it as such. And that's where we have the kind of weird spot, because if a customer goes in and has a beer and it tastes bad, they're going to instantly say that beer is bad. And that's the reality of it. They're going to say that beer doesn't taste good. And so they think that brewery doesn't taste good. They're not going to buy it at another establishment or at the LCBO.
Exactly.
So it's really tricky.
It is. And it's, if someone's going to drink a Great Lakes at a bar, we want to make sure that it's clean, fresh, proper glassware, proper temperature, proper washing is happening. So having someone kind of do that check for us, that makes sense to us, because we want, Mike Boone of Southern Etobicoke or South Etobicoke to go into one of his bars and go, let's say Bryden's, and go, I can tell this beer is clean. The glass is good. The temperature is good. Everything's pouring nicely. That benefits us. That benefits the customer. Benefits the bar, because, as you said, Steam Whistle gave you those 50 accounts and saw that there was a 16-point increase. But at the same time, if you're opening a bar and you want to have, the best beer in the province, you have to take some ownership and responsibility of making sure that whoever you're pouring, you're giving the customer the best experience possible. And so that's where that gray area comes. Well, so we haven't answered the question today, but
so, I think that in a perfect world, the licensee makes the most sense. But we, unfortunately, live in an imperfect world.
Yes.
That said, I do want to also mention we have our Clean Beer Here program. It's a program that's complementary to all of our licensees. And it's a program where if we clean all of the lines at the establishment, then we certify them as a Clean Beer Here establishment. We'll put a little sticker in the window, and they get on our cleanbeerhere.ca website. And that's
like we used to do the coasters, where if someone was
I still have some. We still give them out. Yeah.
Someone would go into a bar, drink Great Lakes. They'd get a coaster that on one side was Great Lakes, on the other side it would say this line was cleaned within 2 weeks. And so it made the customer more aware of this bar is a place that takes draft line cleaning seriously. This brewery and this company, all working together to make sure the customer has the best experience.
If you're getting your lines cleaned every 2 weeks, tell people. You don't have to tell them all up front and whatever, but put a little chalkboard in your bar. We will give you the chalkboard. And then just say, lines cleaned every 2 weeks, and put the date on it. Your regulars will thank you for it.
Okay, we're going to move over now to, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think this is what people are coming here for. They want to hear some stories, and I know you have. There's no doubt you've seen some pretty gnarly stuff in bars and restaurants throughout the years. I've seen my fair share, where you walk through the back door and you take a keg somewhere. But I'm sure you've seen some pretty spectacular locations as well. So we're going to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with some horror stories, though. So without naming names, tell me about some of the craziest stuff you've experienced or seen. I've seen a lot of pictures over the times from different line and
course.
Yeah.
So we call them, so first of all, I'll talk about some of the bacteria. So when you take a faucet apart and you see what's inside of there, we would call it, the boogers or the slugs, because it looks like the bacteria has formed into these like slimy chunks. And so, it looks like a slug. It's disgusting. Similarly,
they're not slugs though. Let's
not literal slugs, yes, but bacterial slugs.
Yeah.
And we would call it, it's not literal cheese, but we would call it coupler cheese. When around the coupler, it's just got that like yellowy, disgusting. It smells kind of like cheese.
I used to call them mushrooms, actually. Yep.
Funny you say that, because one of the ugly is there was an account I was in where in the walk-in cooler was growing mushrooms out of the corner of the cooler, not intentionally growing, but it was one of these beautiful moments of life finds a way. And more to the ugly side of things, after the pandemic, or I should say after the initial big lockdowns of the pandemic, when a lot of accounts started to reopen, if they didn't do a shutdown procedure, then Oh, boy, howdy. And some of these places were closed for a couple of years. And we would open up the trunk line, and it was like you just walked into a universe where every single beer store floor was put into one little section. And that's where I just say, guys, we have to replace the system. You know, if they don't want to replace it at that stage, that's when I will say, okay, I can't put my name behind this one because you're going to get complaints and I can't justify this. So,
it's like you're in Super Mario Mushroom Land.
Oh, yeah. The other big kind of ugly ones I've seen would be, this account is still in operation, but they have what I would like to call beer chastity belts.
Jumper cables?
No, this is where they put on the faucets, like over top of the faucet is this big box. And you have to press a button, and that's connected to their like POS system where it'll only let you press the button to allow beer to dispense if you've punched something into the POS.
What?
And it is awful because you can't clean them. You can't clean them at all.
So sorry, what's this, like theft?
I think it's a loss prevention technique, but it ends up being you can't clean it, and so it's foamy as anything. Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah, it's gross.
Okay, name a couple more.
Okay, so that would be, the ugly side of things. I mean, it's what you're expecting. It's like a few of these, it is accounts where we will get the Christmas globe, where it's like the snow globe worth of bacteria and beer stone coming out during one clean. And it looks like, you got to get the lice out of the system or something. Yeah. Again, metaphorical lice, not real lice. But it's just so gross. And, generally when you smell, kind of like, the TTC, if you smell something, say something. Like when the pint smells bad, it's bad. And, one of the fortunate things of me being American is that I have no shame. And so I will send beers back. I'm like, no, I'm not drinking that.
Come on. I got that. I got a question for you later on that. Okay, let's move on to the bad now. Those that you've come in and either fixed or tried to make better. You mentioned a couple where, but what's when you, so you have the ugly where, mushrooms are grown in the side of a fridge, and then you go into the bad. Those that maybe want to try to be better, but just have inherited a bad system. I'm going to say right now, if you get headaches, maybe this is like old school man talking, but when you get headaches, it's like an air compressor maybe is pushing your beer out, but have you seen a lot of air compressors, and is that the bad and they want to fix it? Jumpers? So
I'm fortunate enough to have been doing, draft stuff for 13 years. And so I would say I haven't seen an air compressor in a system in a few years. It's been at least 5, which is good. There used to be a few, and it would taste kind of like cardboard and oranges.
Or motor oil.
There's a lot of gross stuff out there, but I would say pretty much
those
all
are
of
mostly
those,
the dive, like the biggest dive bars you can
Shout
imagine.
out Bistro 422. I don't think they're still open.
I don't know, but it's the biggest.
But that was old school, And so they had an air compressor for sure. Now, I would say a lot of times, though, we're replacing older Freon systems. These are like older dispense systems. They used Freon gas instead of using glycol, which is the more modern systems. And so those, when you cut them open, you'll just get all this sludge and slime. And I was cutting open a system a few weeks ago, and just the amount of like the slow drip from a leak that they had that we were there to repair became just fruit fly city. And I would like to I am now having an old memory come back, and I do have an ugly. I have the number one ugly.
Okay.
I would skip ahead 30 seconds if you're squeamish. So I was at an account in Kensington Market. I will not say which one, but I was at a big account in Kensington Market, and they asked me to replace a draft tower, 2-tap tower on the bar top, and easy job. Not a big deal. There was a 1-tap going to a 2-tap. Cool. And I remember I was there and I started to, unscrew it. And I was like, oh yeah, geez. Okay. And I see a cockroach on the bar and I was like, oh, this is gnarly. Okay, whatever. I've seen cockroaches before. I'm not too squeamish. I always wear gloves when I work. I take the tower off. And when I did, it was like Men in Black.
Oh my God.
I saw well over 200 cockroaches swarm in the middle of the day out of this onto the bar top everywhere. I freaked the fuck out. Holy shit. It was so gross. I was like, oh my God. I pulled it out. I then go to tell the bar owner, and he did not give a single fuck. He was just like, yeah, whatever. I'll call. The exterminator was just here. That couldn't possibly happen. And I was like, dude, this is so gross. I put the new line in. I was there on behalf of somebody else. It was just like okay, I'm going to put this in. This is disgusting. I do not sign off on this. This is gnarly. You need to get this fixed. And then I left. I called my office and I said, I'm taking the rest of the day off. I need to go to maybe a priest or something.
Decompression.
So that was bad. But a lot of the going, from the ugly to the bad, a lot of the bad is stuff like these gimmicks that we see. Things like there's a product, and I don't mind going to fisticuffs with them, called the BLM 2000. Which, we refer to as the blinky light machine. And it purports that it does sonic line cleaning. It sends sonic waves through the lines. But the thing is, sonic waves, yeah, sure, they can help things.
So what, when the systems...
So you don't have to clean the lines instead?
Oh, it just...
Instead, sonic waves go through the lines. But if you have a bend in your line, or if you have any pieces of splicing or hardware, those sonic waves don't work. Or any of the hardware, the faucets, the couplers. And so they sell it as like an alternative to expensive line cleaning and stuff. And you plug it in and it works.
Well,
it doesn't
if we
work.
see some third eyes from the drinkers at those establishments, we'll understand that. So what makes a good or a great draft account?
Yeah, I think a good draft account is one that is thinking through the entire life of the system. You want something that is going to be easily serviceable, because not every system, you never know when something comes a little loose or something changes or the customer wants to make a change. Mm-hmm. And so having a system that you can access as much of it as possible is important. Similarly, having a system where you are not just going with the bare minimum size for your glycol deck. Maybe you're making sure you have enough of a buffer for that line chiller so that it's not going to be overworked, that you're maintaining it regularly, and then that you're also thinking about a bunch of other things. So, for example, in our installs a few years ago, I was really upset about this idea. So there is different types of line that you put in a system. One of them is called restriction line or choker line, and this is how you slow down the beer. At the very end, near the faucet, you put in a small diameter of vinyl or similar tubing, and that will restrict the line so that the product goes slower when it's coming out of the tap, and it's not going to shoot out like a rocket.
Yeah.
That way, you're balancing the system. The problem with that is those lines, those flexible hoses, need to be replaced every 1 to 3 years, depending on the material. And that never sat well with me because I've never seen anybody who's ever replaced the restriction line. Yeah. It's in the trunk, under the ball. It's a pain in the ass to get into. Nobody's ever going to do it. And so I kept thinking, how can we not put that in? How can we avoid that, but still balance the system? And so we troubleshot it and tested it. And we ended up developing a different way that we do our installations now, where we're able to adjust the restriction in the system without using any of that or any of those, they call them swizzle sticks. Okay. Yeah. These little propellers in the line that slows it down. But if you put hops or anything through it, it's going to clog it all up. Yeah. And so we developed a system where we can slow it all down. That way, if you're pouring a wheat beer that needs a higher CO2 pressure, then it's still going to pour nicely. But then the next day you want to pour, an English ale that maybe you need to lower CO2 pressure, then we can adjust that restriction. So it's still going to pour at the same rate of flow, but it's what's right for the beer. And that is something that I really think is the good of a system. When you're able to do that balance and you think of it the whole way through, you're not using too big of a diameter. It's a lot of little things that add up
Do you got
to
the
be a
pattern on that?
successful system.
You got the pattern on that?
No comment.
Okay. Very quickly, you walk into a bar. Not you, but Mike
Sure.
Boone, who's recording this right now. Mike Boone walks into a bar. What should he be looking for when they receive their pint? Because as you said earlier, if Mike walks into his local, he's not going to be like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Bartender, I have to walk downstairs, inspect your keg fridge, look and see if the couplers have mushrooms on them or whatever. How, when he gets that pint, when he orders that pint, what should he be looking for to make sure the beer is clean, the lines are clean? In a quick...
the quickest things to look for is look at your pint, okay? Well, first off, look to see if they had a clean beer here sticker in the window. But otherwise, look at your pint. If there's bubbles all along the glass wall, that's a good sign that the glass isn't properly beer clean. If the pint looks like apple juice and it doesn't have, the
head
two
just
fingers of
dissipates,
head at the top, that is, a nice protection layer, then something else is wrong in the system. Be it there is, bacteria that does kill that head, or the glass isn't clean, or they're using the wrong dispense gas. So a lot of things like that, you want to look at it, and if it looks right, that's a good sign. And then, of course, smell it. Like I said, if you smell something, say something.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and then come back with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Rapid fire? All right. Hang tight. We'll be right back with Paddy Treacy from Northern Lines.
Okay,
Here we go. When you hear the music, go for it.
will do. The GLB Brew Pub. 20 taps of the finest craft beer. Amazing food like burgers, pizza, Taco Tuesday. And check the retail store for amazing GLB beer, merch, and accessories. Open 11 to 11 at 11 Lower Jarvis Street, right near Sugar Beach. We know where you're going tonight. The GLB Brew Pub. A great place to see, the best place to be.
Nailed it.
Okay, man. Are you ready for this? Rapid fire questions, rapid
Let's do
fire
it.
answers.
Yep.
Okay. Thoughts on flow control?
Pro.
Hardest part of the job?
Emails.
Longest draft line that you've ever serviced or installed?
Serviced would be Delta at Delta SoCo. It is in a different building.
How long? Well,
Easily over 300 feet.
oh my God. Best advice for someone who receives an off pour at a bar.
Send it back and get a can.
And what do you say?
This doesn't taste right.
I'd like a can.
Please give me a can. I don't trust your draft system. Also, call my friend Paddy.
What beer have you been enjoying recently other than Great Lakes Canuck in your fridge at the office?
Ooh, at our office? Oh, it's so easy.
No, I'm saying wouldn't you have Canuck at your fridge?
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, that's at home. At the office, though, easy recommendation. Sorry, I am going to plug you guys, which is the Great Lakes Stout on Nitro. We've had it at our office year round. It's amazing.
Okay. All right. And what about Hop Pop?
Oh, I love Hop Pop.
You guys love Hop Pop.
Hop Pop's where it's at.
Name a person or brewery in the industry that continues to or has inspired you.
Yeah, it would be my mentor, Matt Meadows, who works at New Belgium. He is the draft quality guru, the liaison. He's the guy who wrote the preface in the draft quality manual.
So the Brewers Association manual?
Yeah. So Matt Meadows is a good friend of mine. We get to talk, every 6 months or so. We have a nice little call. And we'll say 15-minute catch-up, and it'll be 3 hours.
Why don't we bring him to the Ontario Craft Brewers Conference this year?
It would be amazing. He's a great speaker.
Let's work on it. Best time and place for a beer?
Friday after work.
If you could drink only one beer for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Allagash White out of Portland, Maine.
Very good. Favorite place to grab a beer in Canada?
Thirsty and Miserable over at their new location on Dundas, very close to my home, with an honorable mention being Food and Liquor. Love them so much. They're just a little further.
Food's
further
really
away.
good at Food and Liquor,
Oh
too.
my God, it's amazing.
If you could have let me try that again. If you could have a beer with just one person in the whole world, dead or alive, famous or not, who would it be?
Jeff Probst of Survivor fame.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that would be my intro to him. One, he is a great speaker, great leader. Love listening to his podcast. And two, that would be how I do my intro to him, because I have every intention of competing on Survivor.
I thought you were going to say Harry Potter, because I understand that you had a Harry Potter podcast back in the day, in the early days of podcasting. Best hangover cure.
Oh, it's got to be a bowl of ramen and a full-blown Coca-Cola original.
Okay. Last one, Paddy. If you could leave listeners with just one message, what would it be?
Yeah, you deserve to drink great draft beer. If you're spending as much as pints are going for these days, then the brewers are doing so much to keep it great. And so you want it to come out of a great, fresh, clean line. And you deserve it.
And not only tell the bar, but tell the brewery.
Yeah.
And then the brewery can follow up.
Shout it from the
with
rooftops.
There you go. As I think I said this, as Buddy the Elf said, if you want people to drink craft beer, shout it loud for all to hear. So awesome stuff, Paddy. Again, I appreciate you coming out to tell everyone about your journey in beer, about Northern Lions. I've been in this line of work for so many years, and I said earlier I learned something new today. So thank you for that. The info shared will be great for drinkers to absorb. I really do believe that. Hopefully they take the knowledge, you listening right now, take that knowledge into the bar that you go to. And next time you order a pint, take a quick look at that. Smell it. Hold it up to the light. See if it holds up. And if not, let us know. We'll let Paddy know. Cheers for coming on today.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for having me. And a quick shout out to all of my wonderful staff. You guys are great. We love working together.
You have how many staff right now? 13?
13 of us. Yeah. Yeah. We're a great little crew in Toronto.
Well, thanks again, Paddy, for coming on.
All right. Thank you for having me.
There appears to be only one line on this sheet. $50 for a case of Great Lakes Premium Lager. That's it? That's the ad? Okay. Cases of Great Lakes Premium Lager are only $50 every day of the year.
Around the industry.
GLB turned 38 years young on February 12th. That was a couple weeks ago. And our special $38 case deal on Great Lakes Lager was hugely popular. The beer, featuring a retro 1994 label artwork, sold through fast, and customers enjoyed the custom cans. They enjoyed the custom cans so much that we're bringing some more back. So if you go to our store right now, you may be able to find a couple more kicking around. We did another couple pallets. So they are going to sell at the regular price of, bear with me, $50 a case. Octopus Wants to Fight 8-packs are now available across the province. We're trying to get those out to convenience stores. GLB retail store has them. The Brewpub shop has them. They're $26.95. As our pet Octo says, 8 is better than 6. Right now, go to your calendar. I'll pause for 1 second. April 4th. Clear it on the calendar. GLB will be bringing Sunny Day to the province. That's it. Stay tuned for more details. Unfortunately, a couple more Ontario breweries are closing or in the process of change. Conspiracy Theory Brewery in Bell's Corners near Ottawa has announced that they are closing, and there is a rumor, and a strong rumor, floating around that Salter Street, located off Queen East in Toronto, is closing in March. That said, Salter Street mentioned that talk of closing might be jumping the gun a bit, as they are currently in limbo while chatting with potential investors or buyers. So all the best to them from us at Great Lakes. Now, some good news coming out of the West Coast, British Columbia. The Mark Anthony Group recently won court approval to buy Central City Brewers and Distillers Limited out of creditor protection in a sale set to close on February 28th. Central City entered creditor protection, as aforementioned, in November, creating quite a stir on the West Coast. And lastly, as a reminder, please, if you've made it this far, the Ontario Craft Brewers Save Local Craft Beer campaign is still alive. With the Ontario election right around the corner, please go to savelocalcraftbeer.com and lend your support for advocacy for changes in the way we are taxed and the way we operate here in the province. And with that, that's it. That's all, folks. Episode 29 with Paddy Treacy, the draft master at Northern Lions, has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. Today's episode was fueled by cans of Canuck Pale Ale, which you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, select grocery stores, convenience stores, and online at greatlakesbeershop.ca. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street in Toronto. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, guest ideas, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.